Hello, this is Jeff, and this is episode 1 of the Mystery series, where I will be attempting to create a text adventure in the vein of, say, Zork, using Rust and ncurses. So, I am using the Sea Lion IDE, and I'm using that because it has fairly decent support for Rust. I'm going to hesitate to call this a tutorial. It's not necessarily going to be for beginners. I will explain what I'm doing design-wise as I go along. This is really more of an exercise for me to hopefully get a better handle on how to best structure solutions in Rust. And I thought that I would record it so that you would get the benefit of my trial and error and frustration as I go along doing this. I've attempted this once before. I have a video series on YouTube that is an archive of a stream I did for a week on Twitch, where I attempted to create what I called Rusty Kong, which was a reproduction of arcade Donkey Kong using Rust. And I actually made decent progress looking back on that. In hindsight, there were definitely some things that I was doing incorrectly, as far as, the best way to structure a solution in Rust. And so I thought about maybe finding a simpler problem space to work with, but one that still has some data structure complexity and, would still end up being a good exercise in terms of really understanding how to best design, a Rust solution. So with that said, I am using two crates right now, and probably I don't see any reason why we would use any more than this. I'm using a crate called ncurses. There are other ncurses wrappers for Rust, and I played with a couple of them. One is called Cursive, which has a console-based kind of windowing system. My complaint with that was that it was a bit too abstract for what I was trying to do, and it didn't let me get to the underpinnings sufficiently to be able to kind of control how the screen would look. And also, I wanted something that kind of mirrored the ncurses API as it is anyway. And so this wrapper seemed to be the best example of that. And that is, if we look at the TOML file, I'm using version 5.910. And I'm also using a library, a crate called Text Wrap, which does exactly what it says in the tin. You give it a string and you give it a width and it wraps it for you cleanly. It supports hyphenation, but I'm not using that. Most text adventures in the past did not support hyphenation. They just would break words on word boundaries, which for our purposes is going to be more than sufficient. So what I did was I spent some time and I just wrote a bunch of code in main to just kind of get a layout for the screen. Now, because of the way that this works, I can't run it from within Sea Lion. I have to run it in the terminal directly. But this is what I've got. So with ncurses, I have a window at the top that has the name of the program, it has the room that we're in, has your score, and has the number of moves that you've committed. And then, just like a good old classic text adventure, you're going to get a description and an input line. And I have code written that supports, character movement left and right, but not up and down. You can do backspace, you can do delete, so all that works. And there's no parsing yet, but there is scrolling. Oops, Q is quit. So the scrolling works, so that top bar stays, and that's as far as I went with it, was just to get the basics of what the windowing would look like. And I did this entirely in one method because, believe it or not, in Rust, that's actually easier to work with. That when you start spreading things out into different functions and you start passing references, that things become more challenging from a design perspective. So what I would like to do in this episode is I would like to maybe decompose some of this so that we have some better structure around this than it just being a bunch of procedural code that's written in a main method. So my first thought here was to create a type. So in Rust, we would create a structure and we'd call it the header window. And this structure, I don't know if it's going to have, so it certainly would have the game title, which would be a string. It would have the room name. It'll have your score, which will make a U32, I guess. And the moves will make that a U32. And then we want to probably create some traits, right? Or a trait. Well, actually, I think we probably would just do some implementation first on the header window. Certainly we want to be able to create a new header window. So this should be pretty easy. Let's see. I walk away from the oh, right. Yeah. So it is this, and then here. So it's game title, room name, can we do it that way? So stir is a slice. I think these are technically, yeah, well. Yeah, there we go. And Slices are more efficient, but I'm going to stick with having an actual string object here instead of the slice. So we we can create our new header window. It has a game title, has a room name, and a score and moves. So, and then we should be able to our window is a pointer. Yeah. So it's a pointer to a signed 8-bit integer. So this is a ncurses call. We need to get the maximum x and y for the terminal window. So here we're going to create a window, and we're going to say it's one line and it's max x columns, and it's one line high, and, or I'm sorry, it starts at line 1 and, oh no, I'm sorry, it starts at line 0 and column 0. So that creates our new window pointer for the ncurses library. And so now we want to be able to essentially take this bit of code and we want to have a method on called update. We already have the window. This is self title win, or just win actually. And this is going to be the name of the game, and this is going to be the room. So this is self game title self room name for that. And then the score, this is self score and self moves. Okay, so that right there should have successfully refactored that part of the code out. So now I should be able to have a mutable header that is a header window, and we get that from header window new. And then we call header update, and that should produce the same result as what we had before. So let's try to compile that. Right, okay. So what we should do is max x I32, max y I32. So we we can set those on the object that we create. So now we can access that like that. Okay, these are warnings. We can ignore that for now, because we'll end up using it eventually. Okay, so now if I open my terminal window and I run this, I should end up with the same thing, maybe. No. Oh, there it goes. The compiler was just very slow. Let me try that. Yeah, it was just very slow. There we go. Okay. So the answer is we do. Okay, that looks good to me. All right. So now, okay, so we have a header window that has some methods on it. And so we pass to change the room name. We want to copy or do we don't want to do that. I'm sorry. We want to move so let's see here. Because well, that that will most likely make a copy, but I don't think, yeah, it won't move it because so let's see. Looks like we can't. So there is like one way I could think of doing this. But I don't know that I particularly like that. Yeah. And then we could I think that might be the better way here, because we just want to move it, right, in both of these cases. So when we create this, our game title is Mystery, and our room name is what was it? Dark and grimy motel room. Yeah, but these are yeah, that works. Okay, so okay, so that code's gone. Remove that. Now we want to make the actual input area so this needs to get refactored into a type of some kind. So let's call this the story window. And there's going to be a window pointer on this. Okay, so we're going to have on story window have a new function that returns a story window. And we'll be a little bit inefficient. We'll just compute the min and max for both. Because this is only going to happen once for each window. Okay, so we're going to create our story window. We need to call these functions. And then we have this escape string or escape sequence, which is how we parse. So that's a string. And then, so that should return back an equivalent object for us to work with. And then we're going to have a run function that takes a mutable reference to ourselves. And this is where our loop is going to go. And we need some mutable variables for the y and x because we need to know where we're at. Okay. Let's rename this to be header window. And this is just standard initialization code for ncurses. And this is standard shutdown code for ncurses. Okay, so let's compile that. Okay, we missed a couple. I am impressed with how helpful the Rust compiler is in general. I mean, they do seem to have some good code in there for recognizing contextually where things are at. Okay, so now we've taken that code and moved it from a purely procedural structure to a more rustic structure where we actually have two structures that represent the different windows, different parts of the screen. Now the next thing I'd like to do is have a function called lookAtRoom, and this code here we're going to move here. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the room. And then here we're going to print out something like this. Because this is where we're going to put our parsing code. And we want fn, we want another function just called prompt. And this bit right here is our prompt. Okay, so what should happen now is we should see a description of the room. We should see the prompt. We'll be in the input mode. When we hit enter now, or when we hit enter now, we're going to get the parser, which doesn't exist yet, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And it should show you the prompt again. So let's make sure that compiles. And we still have warnings. Again, I'm not too worried about those. Those are going to go away on their own over time. Perfect. So now we get a description of where we are. And if I type something, right, we're in that case, and it gives us a prompt again. So now we can get clever. So what we need to do, which I think I'm already doing, maybe. No, I'm not. So if we get right, okay. So here's what we need to do. We have this escape sequence, which is a helper for terminal escape sequences, but we also need to get we need to have a string that tracks the input. Okay, so we're going to put that on our story window. And then when we get down to here, this is the fall through where we're actually putting the character on the screen that we're printing. And that's going to put it into our input sequence. And then when we have a prompt, we're going to clear the input sequence. So that will always reset the input sequence. And then now we can do let result equal match self input sequence and if it doesn't, if it falls into our default case, so if it's quit, yeah, but that's a, Right, so how am I going to do that? There we go. Okay, so so if it's quit, because we don't want to do this anymore, right? We don't want to check if it's Q. Q is a valid character. Yeah, it takes. Okay, let's just try that one case. Perfect. Okay, good. All right. So now we can have a condition in here for look, and this is going to do a self look at room some, or actually none, right? And this will be some, and let message, right, yeah. Match result unwrap. I think that's what we want. So if we can't parse a command for some reason, or we want the command to directly issue a response, we can then use the option mechanism in Rust to populate that. If there is no message result directly from the command, then we can do a none. Right, in that case, we're calling some other function that's doing some work for us. And we always end with a prompt in that scenario, because that's, oh, right. Okay. All right, so help, he doesn't understand. West, doesn't understand that. East, doesn't understand that. But quit understands that. And then also, look, quit. So let's do this. I think we have one too many line feeds there. There we go. Look, help, quit. All right. So I'm pretty happy. I think there's just one last thing we can do as a starting point for this. Let's actually define what a room, right? So this is a text adventure. So it's text adventures historically are kind of defined by rooms or locations. And so we're going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to call it a room. And then we'll have some implementation on room. So a room is going to have a name. It's going to have a description. It's going to have a number. And we'll make that a 16-bit number. That gives us 65 or 64,000 rooms. And rooms are also going to have things in them eventually. So we'll come back and we'll support that. But then rooms also have exits. So the way I think that will end up working is it'll just be a reference to a room. Right, but because it's recursive, we get into lifetime. So I think this will be so what was the syntax in this? Type. Now we could make room number like an enum or room, yeah, room type maybe. How do you spell grimy? Grimy. Grime. Is it grimy? Yeah, no E. I know English real wells. Okay, so then if we do it that way, I like this because we automatically get our none capability here. Okay, there we go. So these are our different exits, right? We can go either up, down, west, east, north, south, and if we have other ways of doing things, right? And this becomes each room then defines what room it will belong to, and then we'll have a map of room IDs to room instances. And so obviously we're going to need a new, so room ID, name, description, okay, so this, that's it. Okay, so there's our room. And then let's have a function on it called describe. And for that, we don't and have an immutable reference to ourselves here. And this will return back a string. And it'll be self.description is the return value there. And maybe you can kind of see where this is going to go. On the story window, we're going to have a room. And I think, yeah, probably this needs to be optional, right? So by default, room is none. So that allows us to construct the story window without a room, and then we can have a function that sets a room and since it's wrapped in an option, we have to put it inside of a sum. And then here, this, we can just call self room describe. And what we might want to do, match on self room, right? If it's none, then we're going to write a message out that says, I'm in the void so this is the end, huh? And then if we've got something, then we can do this. Okay. Okay, so that should right, okay. Oops, my bad. I need to change this to be R. Now see, it's suggesting that I can make this not mutable, but I don't think that's really true. Well, maybe it is in that context. So self room cannot move out of borrowed content. Right. Right, because we can't move this. This we would have to make either, we'd have to copy it, or here we would have to return like a stir. Oops, no semicolon. And then of course if we do this, then we don't need to do that. Okay, so then, yeah, these are just warnings about unused stuff. That's okay. Yeah, and we're not creating a room yet, which is intentional, so that's fine. Okay, so it doesn't have a room, so we, oh, and then interestingly enough, okay, so we don't have a room. Where's the title coming from? So the game title we should pass. The room name we shouldn't. This should be just the default there is the void, right? Because we don't have a room. Until we change it with room name. And if we set the room here, now so here's where things get interesting, right? The story window doesn't have a header. So who manages the header? So we need a way so when we create the and see, header window is interesting because we want to move it in to here. We don't want the ownership to persist in the calling context. The story window just takes ownership of it. I think that makes the most sense. So we're going to take the update call out of there, and we're just going to put that into here for now. So we create the header window, and then we pass the header window into the story window. That should end up in a move because we don't do anything with it. We just take it from here and move it to here, which is what we want. And then so from here, I should be able to go to the header window and set the room name to be self room name. And then with room, do we need I don't think we need a function to do that. Because we can just access description here. And that's okay. Okay. Room. Oh, never mind. Yeah, okay, so how are we gonna do this? Right, we can't move this again. Can I clone that? So if I do string from room name stir, oops, yeah, oh, but I could maybe, there it goes, yeah, because I can do, this is not a move, right, because I'm copying it here. And then the move happens. So it's just finding the order that makes the most sense. Okay, so on the story window, we can set the room. Okay, so now let's run this again. Okay, right, so our room name shows the void. And right. Now let's create a room. So let grimy hotel room equal room new. And this is going to be room identifier grimy hotel room. The name is grimy and dark hotel room. And then the description is I'm in a dark, seedy, and extremely dirty hotel room. My head is killing me. And this okay. Okay, so I just restructured this a little bit so that we only have one call to wprintw for ncurses, and then we're formatting everything into this string. And that'll give us a little bit of flexibility, I think, down the road there. Okay. Now, the question is, should it be... Well, for now, that's probably okay. Okay, so we're in a grimy and dark hotel room. Look, help, quit. Oops. So I think this leading line break, you don't really need it. Oh yeah, it won't run. There we go. So help, look, quit. Okay, so now, oops. Let's add one more room. We'll call this hotel hallway room. And our room identifier will have hotel hallway. If it's possible, this hallway is even darker and more disgusting than that hotel room. Who am I? Okay, so if we go to the west, we go to the hotel hallway. If we go to the east, from the hallway, we go back to the grimy hotel room. Okay, so then here we have west, we have east, we have up, we have down, we have north, we have south. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we gotta unwrap the room though. Right, so let's do that. Let me take a reference of it. Okay, so if it's west, we look at our room west. So here, we're going to set the room to R. And then we're going to return that. But I don't actually, this isn't, oops, spelled it. Oh, right. But yeah, this isn't, it's not a reference to the room, it's a reference to the identifier. And so, how are we going to do that? We'd need to put the map on the story window. Okay. Help, west, south, north, up, down, right. Okay. So the trick is now we need to put, so let's see, rust map. Dictionary. Hash map. Okay, so it's going to be room identifier room. Okay. And so we can just create the hash map there, and then we need a function define rooms mutable self, and we'll take these so this would be self rooms insert room identifier grimy hotel room, and then I should just be able to do that. All right, self rooms insert room identifier hotel hallway, Okay. All right, so that puts the rooms, gives us a way to put rooms into the map. So what we have to do is we have to call story window define rooms to do that setup. Right. And then this, we need to change our room function here to take a room identifier, and then we're going to call let room equal self rooms get room. This should be room ID. Okay. And then we'll just unwrap it here. And we're going to just copy that or move it. So that we need to put some stuff here. And that should fix some of those issues with them. Yeah, I would like to avoid doing that if I can. Because if I can set it, so it ultimately would get moved. Yeah. So I know that I could do that. And then here, it'd be some ref cell new room. Right, so now that's a ref cell. I'm going to leave that temporarily, but I would really love to find a way to do that without a ref cell here. At the moment, I'm just not thinking of how I would do it. But I think there's a way. So then here, right, we have to so we gotta clone it and then borrow it. So that's going to give us this is going to look up our room, right? So not switch. Match. So if we match room, it's none, something's going to happen. If it's some room, right, so this is a reference to a room. What do we want to do? We want to set see, yeah, I think, okay, so let's do this. Let's make this method much easier. Right. Okay. Okay, so, right, so then we end up with a reference to the room. So when we look at the room, we're looking up the room from the dictionary. We get an option here, which indicates that it wasn't found. We know that we always have a none room identifier. So in that case, we get the none room. If we did get a room, then we just return that room reference. Then we set the room name on the header window. Then we get the description from the room because we already have it here. And then we format that out to the window. Okay. Oops. The window title, oh, because, okay. We have to call update here because we have to redraw the window. Right. Yep. Okay. So west, east. Okay. Split. So now what we're gonna do is this same code, which gets us a room reference. We're going to use that here. Right. And then what we can do is say, okay, west, match, or let's do let new room match room dot west. But actually, yeah, this, we can do this in an easier way. So new room result is equal to self rooms get room dot west. Let new room equal match new room result. And if it's none, then it's going to be our void. And if it's some room, return room. Right, so changing the room is actually setting the room to the new ID. So if the direction doesn't have, if the identifier in a direction is none, then we can't go that way. Otherwise, we unwrap, and I guess technically if we do that, then we don't, we can just do this, because we already have checked against null or empty. So that's west, and this would be east. Okay. This is always the tricky stuff. So is there a cleaner way to do this? Maybe. Maybe. So maybe we could do FN next. Move west. Oops. Or okay. So if we call self room is equal to, or actually move west, I do that. Yep. If new room ID is equal to room identifier none, otherwise self room is equal to new room ID, and we're going to say okay. Okay, that works. So then for east, we'll call move east. So we get the room, and we return the east direction. Okay. All right, so we're in a grimy and dark hotel room. If I go east, can't go in that direction. If I go west, okay, heading west. Look. Okay. We're there. If I go west, if I go east, look. All right, so it's not updating the title. Why is it not updating the title? Ah, interesting. Okay, so we are in the hallway. Now if I go east and I look, now we're back in the room. So it is updating it. It's just, yeah, we have to actually explicitly say look. So to fix that, so if we actually move, we're going to call look at room. Okay, so we're in a dark and grimy hotel room. If I look at it again, it gives me the same thing. If I go west, okay, then it auto-updated. Perfect. Now my formatting code for the header's off, right? It's moving that score and the moves in the wrong spot. But notice that our moves incremented by 1. So now we're in the hallway. And then if I go east, our moves increment. And yeah. So, all right. So I'm pretty happy with that. We managed to avoid the ref cell. and the organization is a bit better than what it was. You need to fix the code here for laying out the header so that the size doesn't change the way it is. But that should be pretty easy to fix. And yeah, so in the next episode, we'll just continue and we'll build out more of the game, and we'll get the parser enhanced. Right now it's just matching exact words. We'll get all the directions working. We'll add commands like exits, and then we'll add items and inventory, and then yeah, we'll just keep fleshing out our little game. And again, this is really just an exercise for me to try to find a good way to structure Rust applications, and slowly getting a better handle on how this works. So anyhow, I think that'll do it for this episode, and I'll try to do these about once a week, and keep playing with this. So this is YouTube only, so if you like this content, if you enjoy my channel, please subscribe, give me a like, leave some comments if you have anything to say, and that'll be it. So I will see you in the next episode, and we'll get more of our text adventure working. So thank you.